Hi, I'm Nicole, and this is Nick's Picks. I've been posting a video once a month just talking about the books that I picked out to read that month. So today I'm going to be talking about the 6 books that I read in April. So the first one was great. It was Lights Out by Nevessa Allen. So this was like a dip of the toe into dark romance for me. So I've heard so much about this book. It's supposed to be really good. And again, I love all types of spice level, smut level, none to a ton. But in terms of like dark romance, I don't really read much of that, like specific kinks or fetishes, stuff like that. Also, I don't really like certain things like that. I definitely would not even be able to read. Like, I don't like violent sexual encounters. I don't like anything dealing with gangs or rape or anything like that. So I've always kind of stayed away from like the darker stuff, afraid that I'm going to be stumbling across something that I don't really want to read. So I've heard so much about this book. I'm like, let me dip a toe in and try out a dark romance. So I'm going to start by showing you the trigger warning page. It is long. These are all of the trigger warnings, okay? So I was a little nervous going in, but I will say after having read it, from what I've heard about other dark romance books, whatever, I would say this is probably on the tamer end of the dark romance, and it was amazing. It was wonderful. Anybody else that wants to try out dark romance, I think this is a great start because I really, really liked it. So there is a specific kink in this book. It's the guy wears a mask, and he kind of stalks her a little bit. So, I mean, I was also worried that maybe I wouldn't be nervous or hating it, but I just simply would not be turned on by a kink that is not my kink. And I was wrong. So basically, even though it's not maybe particularly something I want to do or anything like that, I was able to fully enjoy the characters enjoying the kink, if that makes sense. I am a huge Halloween person. So I love blood and gore and the scary movies and all that kind of stuff. I like horror books, all of that. I am not sexually attracted to the masked man, like the villain in the horror movies. And that's kind of, he wears like a mask, fake blood, has a knife, that kind of thing. He makes these videos and, that she watches online. She's into this. So, again, even as someone that has seen a lot of these masked men and all the horror movies I watch and all that, not particularly enjoying it sexually. Like, I'm not wanting to be with the men in the horror movies. So again, it was like weird that I actually appreciated this so much because she found it sexy. I found it very sexy. I could totally appreciate what was going on. And even just aside from the mask stuff, just the way they talk to each other, the flirting, all of that stuff was there. The smut level was amazing. Again, some of the stuff they do might not be something I personally am fantasizing about doing, but I still very much enjoyed reading about it. And, I was able to enjoy it and enjoy that they were enjoying it. Everything in here, I will say, is like consensual, so you don't have to worry about anything like that, if that's something that you don't like reading. And again, it was just wonderful. So what I liked in particular about this was this was one of the greatest MMCs ever. The male main character, Josh, was amazing. I loved this wasn't just smut. There was like story there. There was emotion. I loved like where he came from and like what he brought to this like relationship, this character. I loved him. He's one of my favorite characters ever, I think. So basically it's about Josh and Allie. And again, he makes these videos with a mask and puts them online. She watches them. Eventually he, notices and whatever. He kind of like starts stalking her a little bit and they get involved. So I couldn't put it down at first. I couldn't wait to keep reading. There's one line that and it was nothing. It was just like such a simple little thing. That I just keep repeating in my head that was so sexy that I just love him and I love this whole dynamic. Now what I will say is even like halfway or more through this book, I was thinking this was like a 10-star book. However, I hate that there was a but there is a little bit of a but. So there were a few things that kind of fell off for me. Number one, about halfway through, maybe a little more, the pacing slowed substantially. So I just found myself not as like eager to pick it up, and it got a little slower for me. I will also say that we went from like just super sexy and all about this kink and all about, whatever in the beginning, to sappy. So again, I'm not doing any spoilers, whatever, but once they kind of like get together or whatever's going on with them, it gets, and I love it. I love, their backstories. They're great for each other. I love that they have a relationship. It works. However, it got a little too real life. Like this was like a fantasy book, and the sappiness and the love story part of it got a little too sappy love story for me going through, and towards the end. And I will say that she did a great job of also making sure not to lose the spice at that point. So even when they were together and it was more of like, whatever's going on here, there were still plenty of sexy scenes, plenty of smut, but it's just viewed differently when we're dealing with like strangers and this like sexy get together, and then like, people that, maybe you're thinking about love and stuff like that. It's just a different vibe. And I felt like it went from just super, super sexy to very, very sappy. If that makes sense. Again, well done, and I love that. I love how the story went. If this was real life, like I love the relationship. I love what they bring to it. I love these characters, but it just had one vibe in the beginning for me, and then a different vibe at the end, like halfway through. And then I'll also say that something that happens or whatever towards the end of the book, we get like a whole new storyline almost. There's something where her family comes into it, and like it's kind of like a whole nother thing that really had nothing to do with the vibe of the book going in. And it's necessary to the plot, I guess, but there were a lot of other ways that it could have gone, and I wish it did. I wish we didn't bring any of that in. If you know, because I don't want to spoil it, but like I also read that there is, I don't know if it came out yet, a second book, and it seems to be about that stuff. So it was probably done for setup purposes or whatever, so that we could spin off to other stories. But I just feel like that whole element with her family, and towards the end, almost like a new story started, and I didn't want it to. Like it didn't have a place here. I wish things would have went a little differently at a certain point. And along those lines, the last thing I'm going to say, this book was so good in the beginning, and I was loving it so much. I was loving the darkness of it that I didn't even think I was going to like. Now I'm like into, trying to find other maybe dark romances that I would like. I hate that I walked away disappointed, and I hate that I walked away disappointed because of the back of the book. So I know there are a lot of people that don't even read the back of the book, but I mean, I don't know how, because I feel like you're not going to pick up a book unless you know kind of what it's about, and if you're, something that you're interested in. And I never do this on these videos, but I'm actually going to read the back of the book right now, just so that you could see how it's set up and what you think you're expecting out of this story. And I think it's helpful for somebody else that's going to read that to know that it doesn't exactly pan out that way. So basically it says, trauma nurse Allie Cappellucci doesn't need any more kink. She likes the one she's landed on just fine. To her, nothing could top the masked men she follows online. She fantasizes about one man in particular hunting her down, but she never could have guessed that one drunken text could make those dreams into reality. Josh Hammond has spent his life avoiding the limelight, but his online persona is another story. At night, he posts masked thirst traps for his millions of fans, but one follower has caught his eye, Allie. Together, Allie and Josh live out their darkest fantasies, unaware that Allie has captured the attention of someone with far more sinister intentions. As Josh turns from predator to protector, he must ask himself how far he'll go for the woman he's obsessed with. That last paragraph there is so super misleading. I was so intrigued by that because I love mysteries too, and I love like thrillers, and I'm thinking not only is this going to be a romance, but we're going to get into now somebody else is into her and he's got to like change roles and protect her and all that. I'm not saying some version of that does not go down, but it is not what you're thinking based on that little thing I just read. There, it is not that. It is not that. Turns from predator to protector. This was a very quick blip in the book. Again, it leads to other things that places I didn't even think we had to go, but it's not that. I'm going to say even right here on the cover, it says, The couple who slays together stays together. That is a line from the book. It's in there. But so offhand and not at all what it's making you think this book's going to be about. This is not about them slaying together. Again, something happens along these lines, yes, but I just had a very different impression based on that on the cover and that last paragraph I read on the back about how things were going to change up, and this might be a little bit of a thriller at the end, because it wasn't. So I just had that in the back of my mind. That was helping, contributing to me struggling through the end of this book. I was waiting for something that didn't really happen. I was a little disappointed by how something panned out that did happen, and this whole new storyline kind of stuff that we were introducing towards the end. So that being said, I, again, dipped my toe into the dark romance. I will say this is probably on the tamer end of dark romance based on what I've heard from other reviews of other books. Would totally recommend it to people that both like dark romance or want to get into it. Again, it was nothing that I couldn't handle. Again, even though this was not a specific kink that I shared going in, I found it super sexy. I found everything, that was going on. They found it sexy. It worked. It was still a great romance, great characters. I definitely would recommend this book, but I do think it's important that that it's a little misleading in terms of there's not like a whole thriller aspect going on here, and the pacing's so fast in the beginning, but it just slows at the end. So that's why it's not 5 stars for me, but still a very good book, very good characters, and I definitely enjoyed it. Next we have The Locked Door by Frida McFadden. So anybody that has watched my videos so far knows how much I love Frida McFadden. I hate to say that I think I might have, I've read so many of her books at this point that I think I might have hit all the like super duper 6-star winners. Everything else I seem to be reading lately of hers seems to be like just okay. This was good. So this is about Nora Davis. And, she's a doctor, and she's the daughter of Aaron Neerling, who is a serial killer, and he was known as the Handyman. So when she was younger, he got arrested because, he was a serial killer. So now as she's older, she's a doctor, one or two girls end up dying, being murdered with the same kind of like, in the same way that her dad used to do it. So he's in jail. They know it's not him. And kind of, this suspicion falls to her because they're like patients of hers and connected to her in some way. So that's kind of the whole thing. Like, and we flash back to her childhood. When she was living with her dad, the locked door is like the basement door of their house. It was like his workspace, and he used to like, she wasn't allowed down there. That's where he was doing his, killing and murdering and all that stuff. So yeah, we flash back to when she's younger with him and her mom, and then we, see her now as the doctor, as the adult. We're not quite sure if she has anything to do with it throughout the whole book. As with everything Frida, we get some twists at the end. Not a ton of characters in terms of casting suspicion. She reconnects with someone that she used to date. He's a bartender at this bar that, near where she works that she goes to. His name's Brady. So there's even a little bit of like a romantic line there that was kind of fun to read. And then she has a partner at her practice where she's a doctor, Philip, and she's really close to her receptionist, Harper. So you have a few characters going on there. And again, you're suspicious of her. You're not quite sure where she's at mentally and what's going on. So it's one of those typical Frida McFadden books. Whether or not it's good, they always seem to read very quick. So it's like you can't put it down. You want to find out what's going on, period, end of story. Again, always like some kind of twist at the end. I wasn't like, jaw to the floor, like, oh my God on this one. So, it was okay. Not one of my top Frida McFadden books, but definitely worth the read. I would recommend it. Next, and I am so excited, you can even see I got my like country vibes on today with my Opry shirt. Even though this is not Nashville, this is Wyoming, but the next thing I read was Swift and Saddled by Lila Sage, and I'm going to skip ahead to the last book I read so I can talk about them at the same time. Lost and Lassoed. They're both part of the Rebel Blue Ranch series. And I also brought to show you, last month I read Done and Dusted. So I've already talked about this book. I'm not going to talk about it again, but it is the first in the series. And then there's also one more that I'm reading now, Wild and Wrangled. So this is like a 4-book series. For anybody that has noticed, and because it would irk me to death, so I'm going to explain it. I have 1 hardcover and 3 paperbacks. Yikes. I am so like into my collections and doing everything the same way. So I prefer paperbacks always. They're just easier to read and I prefer them. But this, before I knew it was a series, before I knew it was something I was going to like, I was just drawn to this in Barnes & Noble, as I explained in my last video. Of course, it was a signed copy, and I'll show you that again just because now I love this series, and it's so cool that I have this. So we have a signed copy here, and that's why I picked this up. I loved the cover. I loved everything about it. I didn't even really know I was going to be going on to read the series, so that's why I got that. But then once I did know I was going to read the series, I did not want to commit to 4 hardcovers. I don't like them, and these covers are so amazing, and I actually like them better on the paperback for some reason. Like, I love them and I love paperbacks, so that's why I have my special signed copy for number 1, and then I have all my paperbacks, so that's why. But anyway, so Done and Dusted, again, I'm not going to talk about it again, but my basic takeaway from this was I did really like it. I liked the smut level. I liked the romance between them. There was emotion behind the stories. It was a great book. I had a slight thing with the pacing of the smut. But other than that, I liked it. I would recommend it. I had mentioned that I was going to go on to read the next 2. So this book was about Emmy and Brooks. So Emmy is part of a family that owns Rebel Blue Ranch. It's her dad, and her 2 brothers, Gus and Wes. So the next books are about the brothers' love story. So the book I read next was, Swift and Saddled. So this one follows her brother, Wes, and he is basically trying to, her older brother, Gus, is kind of the one that's being set to take over the ranch, eventually. Wes has kind of got his own little project going on. They have a house on the property that they're renovating, and he's going to open it. And, they're going to let people stay there and all that kind of stuff. And that's like his project, and he's really into it. So he hires an interior designer, Ada Hart, and she's not from like the country, that kind of stuff. I think she's from California. But she comes and she, she's in touch with him via email for a long time, and now the book starts when she comes to actually start working on the project and renovate the house. So she's going to be staying here for a while. They meet. That first time that they meet was enough. It gets you hooked. And I will say, they always put, like, the end of the first book, I didn't know that I cared enough about the brothers. They were there, they were fine, but it's not like, oh, now I need to, there weren't any, stirrings of romance to where it's like, now I can't wait to see about that character. I didn't care enough, but they put the first chapter of the next book at the end of all the books. So I kind of just read the first chapter because I always read things, cover to cover, and I was hooked immediately, and that's why I ended up getting this. So again, that first chapter alone, you fall in love with Wes right away. He's his own person now. He's not just a background character in the book, and he's sweet in his own way. And what I will say is, in all of these books, it's all that the same kind of setup where it's like, we're on a ranch, we're with a cowboy. However, everybody has different backstories, and I am so impressed that all of these cowboys have such a unique voice. They're just so unique. I don't feel like I'm falling in love with the same guy in every book. They are different. And it's hard to make them different. They're from the same family, the same town. We're in the same spot. Just that general Western vibe, that cowboy vibe. But it's different in every book. And every character, again, it's not just about the smut. They come to the table with their own baggage and their own things that they're getting through. There's emotion behind their relationships. This was wonderful. Right down to the nicknames that they use. So, in the first book, he called her Sugar. Now Wes uses Sweetheart. And then in the next book, oh, sorry, not the right one. In the next book, Gus uses Baby. Even the terms of endearment are sexy in different ways. She's, using all different stuff, and I love it. So it seemed to just keep getting better. After I read this, I was like, I think I might have even liked that better than the first book. Then I pick up Lost and Lassoed, and it's like, oh my God, now this is my favorite, hands down. Now this was a little bit more, I will say this was my favorite so far. This is about Gus, the older brother. Now he's grumpy. He's definitely, grumpy. And his romance is with Teddy, who's Emmy's best friend. So ever since the first book, these two have been like, at odds with each other. They are enemies. So we see them always going at it. So you kind of know that their romance is coming and there is expectations there. Like with Wes, it was different because this was just, girl out of town. Wes, who we don't really, care much about up until now. It was just like a brand new romance. This has kind of been seeds were sown and you're anticipating this already based on the other books. And she did not disappoint. And not for nothing, at the end, she actually writes this whole thing about how she was so worried that, she wasn't going to get it right. And she got it so right. There was nothing disappointing about this. It was everything you would have wanted. It worked. It wasn't just like, oh, they hate each other, now they love each other. Is this believable? It worked. It worked. It worked. It was so good. And again, their emotional situations are perfect. It's perfect. He has a daughter also, so there's that dynamic going on there, and she's great with the daughter. And it's just, the setup here is that the mother of his daughter, they were never really together. But they are very good friends and they co-parent. And she's trying to become a lawyer and she's off like doing something for the summer, and he's got the daughter for the whole summer. And it's hard to juggle everything. And it's hard to admit that he can't juggle everything. So it's kind of like Teddy just lost her job and it just works. Emmy, his sister Emmy kind of like puts, the thing in motion where, it would really work out if Teddy helped you out a few days a week. So she stays at his house a couple of nights a week, his enemy. And then, it just kind of goes from there, and it is perfect. Also in this story, Teddy and her dad. She grew up, her dad was like a rock star and had a one-night stand with, like a groupie type person, and she didn't want her. She kind of gave the baby to him, and he ended up, that's why he even moved to Meadowlark, this little small town. It was somewhere he had passed through on a tour, and he moved there, and they, the dad on the ranch gave him a job, and that's why Emmy and Teddy grew up best friends from day one, because they literally grew up together on the ranch. And her and her dad's relationship is, explored even further in this book, and it is great. It is just like the perfect side story that we need. And again, the author at the end, apparently this is mirroring her own life as well. She had like a scare with her dad while writing the book, and she it turned into like a little tribute to Teddy and her dad too, like all this kind of stuff. So this was just 100% perfect and great on every level. And I will say, and I'm not going to talk about this now because I haven't read it yet, but this is my first May read. I'm currently reading it. This is the last book, Wild and Wrangled. So this is about Gus's, the mother of his child, and her like high school sweetheart. So they kind of drop this in these books, like just to kind of, so we're knowing, we're aware of it. I will say I am least invested in Cam, the mother of the kid. She's just not important to me. And even this character Dusty, who cares kind of thing. They're not even really part of this like Rebel Blue family. Again, a couple chapters in, I am so hooked. This might end up being my favorite. It's so crazy. They're getting better and better. So I definitely recommend both of the books I read this month, which is Swift and Saddled and Lost and Lassoed. So good. And really, I keep holding them up. Look at these covers. They are just beautiful. Just the colors, everything. They are so, so beautiful. They are so worth the read. Perfect amount of smut. Perfect amount of emotion behind it. The old characters show up in the other books, so you still get that little taste of them. You're not missing them too much. And then the new characters just take on new romance. It doesn't feel like the same story over and over. It doesn't feel like that at all. And even just the country elements, the songs, the music that we hear in the back, all this kind of stuff, like it works. She's painted a beautiful picture here. And this is a wonderful series, so I definitely recommend those books. Now, my one little disappointment this month, and it was a surprise that I was so disappointed. Everyone on This Train is a Suspect by Benjamin Stevenson. I was super excited. I've had this book for a while, and I was super excited, and I brought this one to show you because, sorry, I gotta just find it. I read this a while ago. Everyone in my family has killed someone. This was such an awesome book. I read it a while ago. I don't remember a ton of the specifics to be able to like talk about this. All I will say is this was so humorous. This was so funny, smart, clever. I was so impressed with the writing. This was a great book. A great book. The pacing, I do remember, I was hooked, and then it got a little slow, like in terms of finishing it. But again, overall, so impressed with it. It's a book I've recommended. It's a book I gifted this Christmas to more than one person. I love this book. So then, super excited to find out we've got this one. Same character. And then there's also, which I don't have, a Christmas book. So I was so excited to keep going with this. So I bought this, and I haven't picked it up for a while, so I finally did. Now let me tell you, it is possible that I might not have been in the perfect mindset, because I read it right after I read Swift and Saddled, because I was so excited to jump into the next book in this series, but I didn't have it. So I ordered it on Amazon. I ordered the last two, but I had to wait a day or two to get them. And so instead of just waiting, just because I was like so hungry for that, but just hungry in general for the next book, I picked this up. I'm like, let me just read this real quick while I'm waiting. So it could be that I was just in romance mode, really wanted that next book in the Rebel Blue Ranch series and didn't have it mode. I don't know, but I don't think I was in the right headspace to read this, and I also will blame the book a bit. I think it was disappointing. It was certainly not as good as the first one. So basically, Ernest Cunningham is a writer, and in this book, so he's a writer that kind of writes about how to write, like mysteries, like crime novels, that kind of thing. And he finds himself in a family-like reunion at a ski lodge, and there's like a serial killer or whatever, and he ends up like having to use his skills as knowing how to write mysteries and crime to try to solve these murders. So in this book, it's Ernest again, and another character from this book that I won't even say because I don't want to spoil anything. So they're on a train. They're on the Ghan, which is like a train, the Ghan, I don't know how to say it. It's a famous train that rides across the Australian desert. And there's like a writers festival. So for all these like mystery writers, crime writers, whatever. So there's a couple of writers on this train. So now everyone on this train is a suspect, because there's a murder, and we're dealing with all of these people that know how to write a crime. So they all know how to do it, and they all know how to solve it. So, it's like this whole thing. And it's supposed to be reminiscent of like Agatha Christie, all that kind of stuff. I will be honest, number one, I hate a train setting. So that's on me. I don't like a train setting, so that probably like darkened it a bit for me going in. Here, the movies, TV, anything, for some reason, just feels a little claustrophobic, or I just don't like this like train setting. With the one exception being, off the top of my head, I just thought of that. There's a series called Run. It's only like 6 episodes. It's like a second chance love type thing, but it's pretty cool, and I really enjoyed that series. And they're on a train. But aside from that, I'm not into that whole thing. Like, so right away we're starting with that. A lot of explaining. Like we have in the beginning, here's the layout of the train. So you gotta like visualize what's going on. You have to really try to get in your head, understand whose cabin is next to who, and all that kind of stuff. A lot of setup, a lot of getting background on these characters that we don't know. They're all like brand new. Like it wasn't like a true sequel, like to say like, oh, I wish we were visiting him and his family again. We're not. This is like just him, and there is another character with him. But they're, in a whole brand new setting with brand new people, and it just wasn't as funny. Now, there are a couple of lines I can even think of off the top of my head now that made me laugh out loud. Like, this writer is funny, period, end of story. So it was still funny, was still smart. I just didn't enjoy it as much. I can't really explain it more than that. There was no drive to read it. It was a struggle to read it. And I was forcing myself to get through it as fast as I possibly could, because then I did get those other books in the mail that I wanted. And I wanted almost I don't stop reading books once I'm into it. Like, that's just not something I usually do. So I considered it. I was like, should I just let this go and get to the other books I want? But I didn't. I stuck it out. I tried to read it as fast as I could. And even doing that, it still took me way too long to get through this book. I was not enjoying it. I was not ever like excited to pick it up and see like what's going on. The pacing was just much slower. I didn't even like the character as much this time around, even Ernest himself. Like, I just, he was being a little selfish in the book, relationship wise and all that stuff. So it just wasn't as good of a read, plain and simple. And again, I'll blame half of it on not even half, I'll blame some of it on my mindset and how I wasn't really probably in the headspace to read this book when I did. But in the same token, like, I just feel like it also just did not live up to that other book. Will I still read the Christmas one? Absolutely. Absolutely. And will I still recommend the first one to everyone? Absolutely, absolutely. But I would say you're not really missing much if you don't pick up this book. Even like the twist, so to speak, they kind of lay it out for you. They tell you you're solving this mystery with him, is like what's going on in this book. Like, he tells you, we got to say the killer's name this amount of times, and he stops every so often to like give you a count. I wasn't even doing it. I wasn't even playing along. I wasn't even like trying to solve the mystery. I just simply wanted to know what was going on and move on. And I feel like a lot of the reveals was like backstory that like we didn't know. So it was like, it would have been real hard to even like solve this mystery, even if you wanted to. It made sense when it all came out and all of that, but I guess you really had to be in sleuthing mode and really wanting to play along in order to enjoy this book. And again, one of the suspects is the killer, and you kind of know that throughout the book. Like, they list, you know all the people you're dealing with, and one of them's going to be it. So, it's not like going to be this super shock for you. And just knowing how things go, you might figure out who it is just because, you know how these things go. So, I don't know. You're not missing anything if you don't read it. It was definitely just okay and disappointing for me having read that other one and loved it so much. But again, I will read the Christmas one later in the year around that season, and we'll see if that brings it back. I don't know. And the last thing, this was so good, Always Never by Jordi Lefebvre. I can't even explain. I've been in the mood for a graphic novel. I picked it up before I went back to Rebel Blue. So I was just kind of like so after this book. And instead of just jumping into another like novel, I was like, you know what? This is the perfect time. This was in my Easter basket. And I was like, I've been wanting to read the graphic novels. I've been intrigued by this one. And I just said, let me pick it up. And it took me a day and let me read it. This was so good. I read it twice, immediately back to back. So why I did that was, this is about Anna and Zeno, and it's kind of like the one that got away situation. So we open on them as like older people, and it starts with chapter 20 and goes backwards. It's so cool. Chapter 20, chapter 9, and you go back in their life, and it's just, oh my God, the puzzle that was put together, like, as they reference things and then you find out why. And it's just, this was so beautiful. It was a beautiful love story. The drawings were beautiful, and just the uniqueness of just telling that story backwards. And as soon as I finished it, I read it from the back. I read with chapter 1 and I read chapter 2. I read it the right way, and it was amazing. Like, it worked. It was so cool. This was just so cool. And it was kind of long. But again, you don't want to put it down. I want to show you some of the pictures just because they're so beautiful. Chapter 7. Oh, chapter 7. That was my swoon-worthy chapter. And again, let me just find like a page with a really nice picture. This was a quick pick from chapter 7. Oh, so good. So good. I'll find one or two other pictures to show you just so you can see how cool it is. Oh, there was one. Oh, this one too is so nice. When they're in the, this is so beautiful. Saying this was a beautiful book. Again, just a beautiful little love story, and very like, let me just find one more to show you this one. I love this music in the back. It's so nice. And I'll show you the very first page, because this is your first experience, is what you're opening up on, and it's just beautiful. And each chapter has like a picture of like something that's significant to the chapter, which is beautiful. Here's the first page. It's beautiful. So, you know, it was so good. It was so good. And very slice of life, like just a normal, this is a woman, you know, almost like, you know, she just went on to get married to someone else, but like they never forgot about each other. They were in kind of contact at some points, and just at the end, they kind of end up like, you know, seeing each other. It's just, I don't want to say too much, but it's just a beautiful story and beautiful pictures. And again, so unique in that it was told from chapter 20 to chapter 1. It was told backwards. So that was great too. It was really good. And I read the whole thing and then immediately read it the other way around, and that was fun too. And it was great. This is a great graphic novel if you like graphic novels. So that's it for April. Again, I'm in Rebel Blue Ranch again for May. That's how I'm starting off. And so far it's great. Again, characters I cared about the least, but I cannot wait because already it's so good and so different than the others. It's so good. So that'll be my first book up next month. But yeah, that's it. So I'll see you at the end of May. Thanks. Bye.